Words aren't just sounds, they're signals. And when used the right way, they don't just spark curiosity, they trigger desire. Not the shallow, surface-level kind, but the kind that hits deeper. The kind that bypasses her logical mind and reaches the part of her that feels, reacts, wants. Real psychology has shown this clearly. Certain words said with the right energy, tone, and timing. Flip switches in the feminine brain most men don't even know exist. The truth is, women respond far more to how something is said than what is said. The right words, spoken with grounded masculine calm, create tension. They build emotional charge, they make her lean in, not because you're pressuring, but because you're pulling her imagination into your frame. And that's where real desire begins. Here's your question of the day. Has someone ever said something simple, but it stuck with you for days? Drop it in the comments. And if you're here to learn how to speak with impact, not noise, type stoic below. Let's break down the words that ignite attraction and why most men are using them wrong. When it comes to creating desire, most men make one critical mistake. They speak too directly. They try to impress, to declare, to convince, but the feminine mind doesn't respond best to pressure. It responds to possibility, and that's where suggestion comes in. It's not about what you say, it's about what you imply. You plant an idea, leave space, and let her imagination do the rest. Directness works in logic, but desire lives in the subconscious. When you say something like, "You're really attractive," it registers. But when you look her in the eyes and calmly say, "You're trouble, aren't you?" with a slight smirk and sense afterward, it lands differently. You're not giving a compliment, you're issuing a challenge, a mystery, a playful accusation that hints at tension, energy, and subtext. That's what stirs her curiosity. Subtlety forces her to fill in the blanks. It creates tension without needing explanation, and the men who master this don't talk more. They speak less, but with precision. They drop phrases that can be read in multiple ways, words that hint at depth, presence, and control. Not because they're trying to seduce, but because they understand how feminine desire actually works, in suggestion, not in statements. That's the power of suggestion. And once you master it, you'll see that the most attractive conversations aren't the loudest. They're the ones that leave her thinking long after you've gone silent. Words carry energy, but not all energy is created equal. Some words pass through the surface and disappear, others stick. They echo, they leave something behind. The difference lies in emotional charge. When you speak with presence, intention, and just the right tone, certain words bypass her logical filters and hit her where it matters most, the emotional core of her attention. The feminine psyche is tuned to feel, not analyze. So when you use emotionally charged language, words like dangerous, forbidden, curious, undeniable, you're speaking her language. You're not giving information, you're creating sensation. And sensation is what desire feeds on. The more she feels without fully understanding why, the more intrigued she becomes. This is why overly logical men fail to create attraction. They explain. They over-clarify. They talk to be understood rather than to be felt. But the men who speak with emotional tension don't need to overtalk. They speak fewer words, but each one lands with weight. Because it's not about what's being said, it's about what's being triggered beneath the surface. Real power in speech isn't volume, it's impact. And once you understand which words carry that hidden emotional charge and how to use them without forcing them, you'll start to see something shift. She'll stop listening with her ears and start responding with her nervous system. That's the difference between being heard and being felt. Most men talk to resolve tension. Stoic men talk to create it on purpose, not to provoke drama, but to spark desire. Because while logic looks for clarity, attraction thrives in ambiguity. When you explain too much, she relaxes into certainty. But when you leave space, when you speak just enough for her to wonder, you activate her instincts. And instinct responds to tension far faster than reason ever could. Tension isn't about conflict, it's about emotional electricity. That moment where silence says more than speaking, where your calm gaze holds her longer than any compliment could. When you say something simple like, "That look, it's dangerous," and then say nothing more, you're not just speaking. You're charging the space, and her body feels that difference. Women don't fall for words, they fall for what words unlock inside them. The need to respond, the sudden breath, the curiosity, the inner conflict between control and surrender. You don't get that from a perfect pickup line. You get it from mastering the rhythm of your speech. Calm delivery, slower pace, strategic silence, and words that leave more questions than answers. She doesn't want a man who explains himself. She wants a man who makes her feel something without needing to justify it. That's the art of tension. And once you shift your mindset from, "How do I get her to understand me?" to "How do I make her feel me?" you stop speaking to her mind and start awakening her instincts. That's where real desire lives. You could say the exact right words, but if your voice betrays neediness, uncertainty, or tension, she'll feel it. Why? Because the way you say something is often more important than the words themselves. In fact, voice, pace, and tone create the emotional texture of your message. And the feminine mind listens for tone first, words second. A slow, steady voice communicates control. You're not rushing. You're not chasing. You're grounded in your breath, your body, and the moment. That pace alone signals confidence, patience, and a subtle dominance that's incredibly attractive. Fast talk, on the other hand, especially when laced with nervous laughter or filler words, instantly weakens the frame. It shows you're trying to impress, not express. Tone matters even more. When your voice drops slightly, quiet but deliberate, it draws her in, not because it's seductive on purpose, but because it suggests calm certainty. You're not asking to be heard, you're assuming it. This kind of vocal delivery has a psychological effect. It lowers her guard. It makes her lean closer. It sends the signal, "I'm not here to win you over, I'm already centered in myself." She might not remember everything you said, but she'll remember how it felt when you said it. That's the hidden layer of attraction most men ignore. But the man who speaks with presence, breathes between his words, and holds just enough silence to build tension. He creates more desire with a sentence than others do with an entire speech. Because she's not hearing a line, she's feeling a man. Words are tools, but only when backed by presence. The right phrase said with the wrong energy falls flat. But when spoken from a grounded, unbothered frame, some phrases do more than attract. They trigger. Not because they're manipulative, but because they signal rare confidence. They communicate, "I don't need your validation. I simply see you." And that subtle shift pulls her in. Take, for example, "You seem like the kind of woman who doesn't hear no often. There's something about your energy, it's loud even when you're quiet. Be careful, I'm not easily impressed." None of these lines beg for attention. They don't flatter her directly, they flip the script. You're not asking for connection, you're inviting it under your terms. That's what feminine psychology finds magnetic. Words that hint at standards, mystery, even light challenge, all without aggression. These trigger phrases work because they carry a deeper message. "I see you, but I'm not moved by you. Yet." That kind of tension leaves her curious. It signals experience. And more importantly, it shifts her into pursuit, not because you played games, but because you spoke from stillness. Most men talk to gain approval. Stoic men speak to filter. And when your words filter instead of flatter, they stop attracting the wrong kind of attention. and start drawing in the kind of woman who's not just listening, but feeling something shift inside her. That's the power of intentional speech, not to impress, but to influence without needing a response. Desire isn't triggered by words alone. It's triggered by the man behind them, his tone, his stillness, his ability to speak without needing a reaction. That's what separates noise from power. Because a man who chooses his words with precision, who controls the emotional pace of the moment, doesn't just create attraction. He creates gravity. And gravity pulls. You don't need a long list of lines, you need presence. You need awareness, and you need the discipline to speak less but mean more. When your energy is calm and your speech is clean, women feel it, not logically but viscerally. That's when desire turns on, not through explanation but through subtle, undeniable tension. If you're building that kind of presence, where even a single word lands with weight, drop stoic in the comments. At Masculine Stoic Mind, we're not chasing attention. We're mastering the psychology that makes you impossible to ignore. Speak less, say more, move with power.